Okay, and your best behavior, everyone.
Right.
Do we have Sebastian with us today too?
He will be on.
Okay. I just quickly looked over the minutes.
Did you get the revised version? Because I made a couple of changes and then he said he sent them out again.
I haven't seen the revised ones yet.
Okay. Go ahead.
I know there was some confusion, I think, about 531 Württemberg Road, where it said Charles Smith, and I think it meant Charles Birnbaum, but I wasn't quite
sure.
sure.
I noticed that.
You got that? Okay.
I corrected that. Yeah. Okay. And I corrected the spelling of his name and also Matt Rosenberg's name.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Other than that, nothing of its substance.
Yeah, it seemed to be a reasonable summary, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, Kathy, two applications were linked in that Google Drive. One was the Duncanberg application in Bollenbecker and Buttonwood, and then, of course, the Wildercliff application. Yeah. Were there others we were talking about today?
No, just those two, because you and I dealt with Grinnell separately. Right. And in fact, are we going to wait for... Should we wait or go ahead?
Well, we do have things that we sort of want Marty and Nancy to be involved in, I think.
Exactly. And certainly Marty. Yeah.
Right. Part of the discussion is not simply the applications, but it's the how we work with the planning board and, you know, what our real function and utility is. Looks like Marty's joining us now.
Good.
Hi, Marty. Can you hear us?
Everyone sounds good.
Hi, Marty.
Hey.
So, except for Nancy, right? I think we're all on. Let's wait till Warren gets off the phone. So, no Nancy, but I'm thinking we should go ahead on if it's okay with you. All right.
I think we should. Yep.
So let's call the meeting to order. We have a quorum.
Yeah.
Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from the last two sessions? And may we approve those for Sebastian? May I have a vote?
I move we approve the amended version that you cited, Kathy, but that I haven't yet read.
Okay.
Yeah, great. I haven't seen it yet either, but that's fine if you made those corrections.
Yeah, they're just misspellings and, you know, whatever. All right. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So there are currently for us two active referrals. Alderkill, which is here at the end of Buttonwood and goes over to, what do you call it? And the Chris Heinz application. So why don't we deal with the easier one first, because there's a couple of things I'll tell you. This is, according to Melody, as she discussed at the planning board meeting last week, the first conservation easement subdivision that this board has had to deal with. And so it was her suggestion that they set up a site visit for the entire board. And then I'm thinking that the committee could tag along to that if whoever wanted to. I'm not quite sure what the committee would have to offer, but at any rate, so if that's all right with you, when that site visit is set up, I'll let you guys know and you can see how you feel about it.
Kathy, can I just interject? I looked at the application and I wondered why it was referred to us, and it seemed to me there were two possibilities. One is, of course, anywhere they're proposing to build a house and do excavation, there might be archaeological concerns, and Anne can certainly look at it with that in mind. And the other is, I mean, the camp itself, you know, existed. It's not ancient, obviously, but it's been there a long time. There may be some local cultural history or some other aspect to that development, perhaps even ruins of earlier buildings. But again, maybe Nancy would have insight on that, but I'm not familiar with that particular property, and I'm not aware of any historic structures, they're documented in Rhinebeck that we would be looking at.
The family has owned that property for 40 years, apparently, something like that, 30 or 40 years. And the subdivision is being created so that the son of the family can build on one lot. A friend of the son's will be building on another, and then they're creating 2 additional lots. Right. So I think you're quite right. I think it's Anne who's probably
I think given the location that there's a potential for prehistoric sites there. Certainly, I don't know anything about the history of it, so I don't know what there might be historic wise, but certainly any place that they're going to be doing excavating for houses, septic systems, new driveways, that kind of thing should at least have phase 1A and 1B done survey to make sure that there isn't any prehistoric stuff there. The other thing, it's just a question, and I was kind of puzzled. If you scroll down on the site plan, down at the bottom, there's a site plan for 18 lots on the property.
So when they do a conservation subdivision proposal, one of the requirements is that you show what a conventional subdivision would yield in terms of lots. The town, along with many towns, wants to discourage conventional subdivisions and encourage conservation subdivisions. But part of making the case for putting houses close together in smaller lots is saying, if you don't permit it, here's what current zoning, underlying zoning for the district would allow, given constraints of steep slopes and water and so forth. And you don't want this. You want to approve our conservation subdivision. That's basically the exercise that applicants are asked to go through.
Okay, well, that explains it, because I was puzzled by what it was. And I thought maybe, there had been an earlier proposal and then they switched it over, but it wasn't mentioned in the narrative, so right, it wasn't clear. Right. Okay, thank you. That helps.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Anything else about that one?
Not for me.
All right, then Chris Heinz, do you want to watch Marty's head explode now or later?
I have a rhetorical question.
We saw it.
Although he seemed interested when we were there, or at least courteous, he blew off every aspect of what we discussed with him. And not only did he, but his professional staff did. And I don't know if this should be a litmus test or not, but, to go over the significance of the playhouse in depth and the surviving features of the barn, and have him call the playhouse a shed,
yes.
Which is a very rare survival. I mean, we have fewer playhouses and Victorian outbuildings like that than anything else. And quite frankly, at this point, I think he should be told he can't even move it. And the barn, what he did was, the front of the barn has been added to. The side of the barn has been added to. So the only portion of the carriage house that is original of significance is A, the side he's going to blow out with garage doors, and B, the other remaining side is the side where he's putting the deck and French doors. So the only 2 facades that are recognizable, he's planning to destroy. It's not that it's the most valuable property, because the house has already had some very cruel things done to it, and that was the real significance. But if we're going to look at these properties as we would like to, and as Charles has been urging us to, and I bring Charles up because he seems to have their ear, and that's very important. the outbuildings in the site are very important. And they really want to destroy the 2 surviving outbuildings and haven't even given us any acknowledgement that they gave it some consideration or why. So I think that we've been doing this for a year now of spending our time and having these meetings, and we're getting a little better at what we need, but we still don't get what we need, first of all, to review these things. And it seems even when we go out, it's a waste of time. So my reaction is to say to the village, you know, town, excuse me. Thank you, town, is to say to the town, you know, we either need some backing up or we're going to lose our professional staff, and then they can pay for it like they do Charles. So I think in certain respects, it's a litmus test. We don't even get a letter back of an acknowledgement from them that we met and that they understand what our request was, but they cannot do it for this reason and that reason. That's like saying to me, we haven't even been there. In which case, I'd rather spend time working my garden. With all this rain, it's a mess. Anyone want to volunteer for that committee?
No.
No.
So there's a lot wrapped up in that. So why don't we sort of take it apart a little bit? And part of it.
Could I ask a question? On the site plan, it wasn't even clear. I mean, they outlined what they were planning to do. And from the archaeological standpoint, I was rather shocked at the amount of screening and tree planting, because when I talked to Mark about it that day, it was, oh, we're just going to put a few trees along the road. And all of a sudden, it's these vast forests of trees they're putting in, which need to be checked out archaeologically. Okay. And he was pushing to, oh, well, you know, it's just a few trees. And I have a pretty good relationship with Mark, and he seems to understand, but in this case, something didn't sink in. The other thing on the site plan, I was confused as to, there are a lot of extraneous things there, and I wasn't sure whether they were part of the plan, like that septic field that they said approximate extent of the septic field. Is that already there, or is that something they're going to put in? The pump station they showed, and it wasn't clear whether that's an existing pump station or whether that was something they were going to put in. And there was a potting shed over in the corner there that I certainly never heard of. So I don't know, it just, I'd like some clarification as to what is actually part of the project and what is pre-existing. The trees, it was pretty clear where they were putting the new trees, but some of this other stuff, it wasn't. And also, I mean, if they're, Mark knows that they're going to have to do archaeology for all those driveways and roads, but he didn't mention burying utility lines. That's another thing. There's going to have to be a lot of archaeology done there.
I think, can I add something to that, even though I've already spoken? I get the feeling, and I don't know any of these people, so I've built no trust with them yet. When I get plans with things just thrown in and noted, my suspicion is always that they're trying to memorialize things, and that down the line, we're going to get a litmus, there'll be a discussion. They'll say, oh, well, we told you that we were doing this. It was clearly marked on the plan. And so I say that to support what Anne is saying. What is existing, they could do it in drawing layers or whatever. What's existing should be marked existing. What is new should be marked new.
So I'm going to ask Warren to comment on, in a minute, on the presentation at the planning board by the guy, Larry, the quote unquote designer who was not there at the time that we were at the site. because I felt as though his take on the property was much more exaggerated than any of the discussion that we had while we were there, either with Chris or, well, the architect didn't say too much, but certainly with Chris. So one more thing, Warren, and then maybe you could talk about that guy, because I found him pretty ridiculous. And I would argue that he's probably the one that identified that building as a shed. It feels a little bit to me, Marty, as though the two clients have said, gosh, we'd like that to be a garage, and we'd like to be able to put our cars in there, and we'd like this or we'd like that. And then that team of people around them are the ones who interpreted what the client asked for. I do think that Chris Hines has a concern for, uh-oh, what'd I do?
You're fine.
You're still there.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
We see you.
See you.
We see you.
Well, I don't see you.
You're lucky.
Well, anyway, I'll keep on talking while I try to figure out what I hit. Anyway, if I go away, you take up, right, Warren? What the crap? Anyway, because Chris did ask for a meeting with Bill Jeffway about Freeborn Garretson. He did I gave him some first edition books on historic Hudson and Hudson Valley and whatever, and he has started a collection of that. So I think that there is, from the client's perspective, maybe he doesn't understand what's completely going on, but I think that there is an intent, at least, to okay, did I lose you?
No, we still hear you and see you.
I can't see a thing, so I don't know what happened. Anyway, there you are. Look at that. That worked. So anyway, I kind of think, and it may be that I'm a little bit too favorable to Chris and Laura, but I think they're getting led by a team of people who are disappointing at best. And at that, I think, Marty, it wouldn't hurt for the committee to prepare, i.e., it would be great if you would do it, a report on what that 1 hour session at that property entailed, what was discussed, what...
I did a letter.
Yeah, you did. You started that, yep.
But it hadn't gone anywhere yet.
No,
so,
you could flesh it out some more.
Yeah, so it feels to me like that would be the next step in response. And then after Warren talks, we could talk about what that means in terms of the committee's role for the town, for the planning board, for historic assets in the town, et cetera, because clearly we're not getting enough viewing time. Yeah.
If I might say two things. First of all, the fact that Chris has lip service, and I don't mean that to be rude, but the same thing happened at Astor Courts, which is nothing even gets back to the client, which is we deal with the architect or the landscape architect or the engineer. They isolate the client. So our input doesn't even get to them.
But Chris is the client in this case.
Pardon?
Chris is the client in this case.
But Chris allowed them to present. He was there for our entire meeting, okay? Right. And had them carry something. Did he say to them, hey guys, this is nothing like what the guy said there? Because he authorized them to have a meeting. And the meeting
he asked for it.
He asked for it, and he blew out every request we had.
And so did Mark. And, you know, I think Mark consistently, or Anne, or whoever said, you said you had a close working relationship with Mark, right?
Well, he seems to have understood what I need in terms of the archaeology, but then this time, I don't know.
It's almost like they wanted to see how much they can get away with in the beginning and then work backwards. It felt a little bit like that to me.
I think that part of the problem that we will have, and it may be a recipe for failure, and I don't mean to be negative or doomsday, but the best properties are bought by wealthy people, the large tracts, and they have bought properties that are historically designated, and they feel because they have the money, I mean, we did better at Little Barns. You know, I'm thrilled with the result there, but this is like 3 times, well, some of them have been better than others, but we keep on coming up. We have wealthy people. They have very ambitious plans. They have no conscience of history, and they're always going to hire someone because they're not going to bother with the little people, which is working people like myself.
Okay, thank you, Karl Marx. So Warren, let's talk a little bit about their
things.
team.
There's a lot to cover there because we keep sort of adding to it, but I do think Kathy is correct in saying, true of Chris Heinz, but true of most applicants, they're hiring professionals to achieve something for them, and they are to some extent guided by the professionals, just as the professionals are guided or think they're guided by what the client wants. The clients then take the applicants, take the response of the professional and say, okay, this is fine. I don't know. I have no way of knowing whether Chris is really going to be responsive to the concerns of our committee, but he certainly was present there, and he did hear some of what we discussed. Larry Garrick was not at that site visit, which is unfortunate. He was in Florida, and he is certainly the design lead on the project. So, you know, Mark Rominski is doing his professional best to represent what Larry says he wants for the client and what the client says he wants. Same thing for Jordan, who's basically taking Larry's drawings and making them buildable and stamping them. But Larry is no question the design lead. He's been around a long time. He's worked on a lot of projects. I don't think he has any particular historic preservation credentials, but he's worked on properties and you know, certainly has awareness of this. But I do think if our committee puts together a report and says, here are the specific concerns we have with this project and with this building, at the very least, it can be shared with the client and they have an opportunity to respond, just as they have at the project on Württemberg Road. So far, I don't think they've seen our comments unless someone forwarded the draft comments to them. And certainly they haven't responded to them, as we've heard they have at Württemberg, but we haven't seen the response yet. So I don't think I'd be too excited just yet until we see what their new proposal is. But
now you're sounding like me.
I do think it brings a larger question that we have to wrestle with. We're going to continue to be referred things by the planning board unless we all quit, you know, individually or as a group. And so one of the things that we need to have clear in our own minds is when a client buys an historic property and they're saying, okay, it's wonderful. There's this beautiful original stable, but I don't want horses. I'm not going to keep horses, and I need a garage. And where am I going to put the garage? And so the applicant's representatives came in and say, okay, well, it's obvious. We'll put the garage, you know, where the stables were because they have horses. They had horses, you have cars, blah, blah, blah. So I can understand that response, insensitive as it was. But let us come up then to it with an alternative and say, okay, we want you to preserve the stables. Marty suggested you could make it a workout room. That's very nice. They may not want a workout room there. We also suggested that they could drive in the front, the historic entrance to the carriage house, and park their vehicles there. But they already think that's going to be a big party barn. And they probably don't want their vehicles, even if they're very nice, on display in their party barn. So we can't expect everyone to keep their buildings or parts of their buildings as a museum of historic Rhinebeck or historic Hudson Valley. So how do we approach what we recommend people do with the interiors of their historic buildings? I mean, they say now in their plans, move and store the stable partitions. Well, they're probably going to get ruined wherever they're stored because they're not going to be, climate controlled storage, and they're not going to be reinstalled there. So it's kind of a gesture, but it's not really doing anything. But what is the appropriate response? And I throw this out to everybody, not just Marty. I'd love to hear from Catherine. I'd love to hear from Nancy and Ann and Kathy. What is the appropriate response when a client says, yes, I have these buildings. I'm not going to keep cows, horses, pigs, whatever. I want to reuse them. I want to keep generally the look they have. There may be negotiating room in how they achieve that, but can we really recommend to the planning board, don't allow them to gut that stable because it's an historic piece of our local history? Is that a reasonable approach? And is the planning board going to back us up on that? My guess is probably not.
No.
Okay, wait, Marty, before you launch into that, let me just add a couple of other things. The planning board did ask for existing elevations of the barn, interior and exterior, and also proposed elevations. So there's more information to come, but I think that it is really important for us to set the description of what that meeting was about, what the discussion was about, as a kind of, here's where we start, both as a committee as well as an advisor to the planning board, because they have not had that yet. And if you guys will remember, they asked us to go there. Mark did, and I'm not sure who else was involved in that, but Mark Graminsky did ask us to go there. I'm sure because he wanted to short circuit what he knows is going to happen, and that's what's happening now. So I do think it's important for the committee to submit its report from that session in as full and descriptive a way as possible, so that they at least have to deal with everything, like the shed is not a shed, buddy, it's a playhouse, and it was Freeborn Garrettson's daughters, and that whole thing. So those are two important things. I didn't need to interrupt the discussion, but I do think it's important to set the ground.
Should that letter go to the planning board as well?
Now, that it definitely, yes. And that is where the discussion that Warren just suggested we have starts, because we clearly are not, getting enough bang for the buck. And I want to just say one other thing. I did, Warren, tell Melody Moore, that I was disgusted with that meeting. And I said, on top of it, I think the committee would like to at least see its report and information that is provided to the planning board published at the time of, a presentation by a client at least at the planning board level, but maybe we could also put it on the website, ours, that is. Yeah. Okay, that's enough. I'm through.
Kathy.
Yeah.
This is Nancy. Is there any reason why we can't send that report directly to the designer and the client?
Well, thank you for raising that. I meant to bring it up. With regard to Wurtemberg Road, if you'll remember, Marty and everybody else, Charles was meeting with them Charles Birnbaum was meeting with them when he was here, and Marty worked really hard to develop a kind of summary report to be shared at the meeting between Charles and the client at the Wurtemberg Road project. And Melody Moore would not let me send it to them directly. So here's what I did. I gave it to Charles, and Charles gave it to him. So, they clearly believe that, well, in particular, she believes I was trying too hard to help them, and quote unquote. And so that goes directly to a lot of what Warren has said and Marty has said, which is the role of the committee, its expertise, and where we intercede. How do we maximize the talent and expertise on this committee, both on behalf of the client, on behalf of a project, and on behalf of the planning board and whoever else forwards it. And that's enough.
Let me follow up on that before Marty jumps in again. This is a discussion Kathy and I had also after the last site visit, which is that, and after the planning board meeting, which I was attending too, the Conservation Advisory Board is invited to offer their comments in a public meeting. We were not offered to read our comments into the record. It's just a box to check at the moment, and it's like, okay, we give the report to the planning board. They may or may not pay any attention to it. I don't even know that they read it as a group. So it's like, if they're not going to do anything with it formally, then we really don't have a credible role here. If we don't want to just be a box the planning board checks, said, oh, this committee looked at it. It's like, well, wait a minute. What were the committee's comments? What were their recommendations? Are they going to be discussed amongst the planning board? And so that's one of the things that we need to really establish with the planning board, what our real function is, not just a referral that doesn't go anywhere. And how do we interact with the planning board? As Kathy noted, the board on their own asked for existing and proposed elevations of all sides of the barn for Wildercliff, and that's good because it means they were thinking about, well, what are the changes? But certainly our comments, once they are formalized, should be part of that record accessible to the planning board and ultimately the applicants too and the public.
And by the way, did you happen to notice, I think you were still there, right? Michael never asks about the HAPAC report submitted, never highlights it, never asks me to say anything, barely acknowledges that I'm there and I'm on that committee too, barely acknowledges it. Could be because I make him cranky or whatever, but he barely acknowledges it. And sometimes I have to like raise my hand to get him to acknowledge it.
Kathy, the committee was set up by the town board.
Right.
And I think we need to establish through the town board that we need to be on the agenda for those reports at the public hearings, and that we will also send pre-application information to clients so that we can establish early on what's important and get them for an understanding. And I think you all received copies of the brochure that I have prepared, and that should be given to all the applicants and their designers. So
Nancy, I got to tell you, I'm not sure everybody, in addition to Warren and I, got that brochure.
No,
so because I think it didn't get distributed because you were going to send it to you wanted to send it to the town first.
Oh.
But I think it's wonderful. It's a great job. And I think it should go on our website. It should go to every applicant in relevant areas and districts and buildings. Well, and I'll send it out this afternoon if you want me to.
It's already on the website for the town historian.
Okay, good. All right. Well, then we'll put it. Can we put it on ours?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, where were we? I forgot. Marty.
Well, we talked about the Wildercliff application. We talked about the dynamics with the town planning board and how that needs to be clarified and improved for us to actually have any utility. But I had kind of thrown out the question about how do we approach interior modifications of historic buildings to.
We have no say on interior modifications. We really shouldn't even be suggesting, because unfortunately, most historic preservation, unless the interior of a building is designated, and I mean like Grand Central Terminal,
right.
Generally it stops on the exterior.
Right.
And I would be happy to just have the exterior, because in fact, that way you're maybe getting the interior a stay of execution. I think that the key thing that really should happen in terms of sequence, and this is this is our fault, meaning jointly, myself in particular, not the town, because we haven't gotten our application form up and running because we wanted to get our website up and running. But the fact is that when a property is designated or how it's listed, whether it's listed in multiple resource or whatever, the first thing we should do is look and see what has been designated on that site. If it says there's a summer kitchen, or it says there's a well, or it says there's a stable, that means it was worthy of putting in the nomination. And that means we have the right to discuss it as part of the resource. If it is silent, we have a rougher time. We can still argue that it was an error of omission, but if it has been listed on there as a contributing property, we have the right to designate it. And somehow we have to get people to understand, particularly on these major properties, that it isn't just the house. That's the whole problem we're having. And that's where Charles is trying to lead the horse to water, is to say, it isn't the Hamptons. Go to the Hamptons if you want. This was a country seat. It is a very different type of thing, and work within those parameters. So I think that people have to, the volley has to be, they say they've looked at it, they're submitting it. We say, have you looked at the nomination or designation? Are you aware of what is designated on your property that was called out 25 years ago, even though our standards are different? So there's a whole lot of stuff going on, but I was never hoping. I always hope by saying these things at a site that someone might pick up the ball. I'm always willing to give more information of saying this is great or this is wonderful or look at the hardware, with the thought that the person might say, hey, this is pretty neat. But I'm not kidding myself that we have any control on the inside. I'm saying the building had historic openings and they were in a historic location. Use them. You want it as a barn, as a place to store your cars? Fine, this is where doors belong. You can do anything that you want. You can tear the stables out if you feel like it and make that your party room. Okay, but I can't control what you do inside, but we do have the right to demand that they pay attention to the outside.
Okay, so just 1 second, Marty. I think we are a reactive committee now.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that by the time ordinarily, the Wildercliff thing aside, by the time something gets referred to us, it has been through pre-application at the planning board, or it's been at the building department of the zoning administrator when they get one, whatever. And so there is not now any role for this committee to intervene or to offer or to produce, for now, anything that is proactive with regard to preservation, either archaeological or historic. And I think what Warren was trying to pull apart there was, that's a role that I think all of us believe we should begin to get a hold of in a meaningful and effective way, the way Nancy did the Dating Your House brochure and all of that. And that's number one. But number two, I think we should also be at every single pre-app meeting for a property that ultimately is going to get referred to the committee anyway, because that means we can intervene there as well. And in that meeting, depending on what the property is, maybe that's a meeting Marty goes to because it's, yada, 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 and he's the best one to talk it through at that meeting, or Warren or Catherine or Nancy or Ann or whoever. So that's the first place today that we could exercise a role that is proactive.
excuse me, I have a question for Nancy.
Yeah.
Nancy, how many sites do we have in the town or village between the multiple in the town, how many sites do we have? Multiple resource listed or individually listed?
In the town, I'm not sure, but with the town and the village, we have at least 500 sites.
Right, but the village is intense, and they have their own historic preservation review board.
Yeah.
So
But
I'm saying, yeah.
The town has the multi-resource district, and that is 35 properties. And then there are at least 3 or 4 individually listed properties in the town. In addition to that, we have the historic district along the Hudson. And I wanted to report that the Historical Society has been scanning all of those applications, and it will be available on the internet very shortly. So there's a lot of properties in that group that borders the river.
I'm wondering, and this, say there are 100 properties of historic significance that are in the town. I'm being totally arbitrary, but let's say there are 100. Should we have a list, first of all of those properties? And should all of those property owners get a letter from the HAPAC saying that we're supposed to review any changes that are made to those properties? Because you also have people who do work who never even file for a permit.
Yeah.
And
so, Marty, I'm sorry, Nancy, just one thing quickly. There's a reason why this committee is a committee and not a board.
Right.
And it has to do with what authority the town board wanted to see invested.
You're right. I'm sorry.
And I think they would go, yikes, what are you doing? You'll scare everybody.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Not that it's not a good idea. I'm just telling you there's a reason why it hasn't been done.
But I think what we can do is more education at the application. When they are making their application, they should be sure that they have copies of the historic preservation or the National Register application. And we do have on the town website a map that shows all of the historic properties within the town and a listing of all of those properties. So
there's also, remember our first committee meeting, we had that map. Yeah, so you're right. We could, again, we could put it on the website. Nancy, where are you?
I'm at home. I'm sorry I was late.
Are you in Rhinebeck? Or are you?
Yes, I'm in Rhinebeck.
Oh, that looks like Florida behind you.
Oh, good.
It's all the rain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, anybody else before we? No?
Well, I think we can make a big impact by requesting submissions of drawings, and that might have more to do with the application that hasn't been put out there yet. But since we're confused about existing versus proposed on the site plan, and we don't have existing on the architectural drawings, they shouldn't be allowed to go to the next step until the drawings that we need to review it are presented. And one other thing is, I feel like the committee would benefit a lot by having a really good landscape person on it, because when I see the site plan with all those new trees, I know that the look of the rolling hillside down into the river will change from the road, and it will no longer be a shared view. but not really having the landscape knowledge behind me, I'm not really sure how dense it would look, or, you know, if I could even comment on it.
Well, you hit exactly the right point. They do have a landscape architect. I'd be willing to bet you anything Charles commented on that. And I think it's to block the view of the house and into the property because they're changing the driveway approach.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to do.
Right.
But we don't have anyone on our committee that can say.
Well, we can make them hire. We could make them hire Charles. Do you want to do that? Is that a good solution or not? Yeah, why not?
Well, Catherine's point is very well taken, that we have a right to request additional information. We can say we don't really feel we have enough information right now to make a recommendation. You know, we would like to see the before and after, or the existing and proposed drawings, and we would like maybe even a photo montage showing the effect of the landscape view from no road, which right now you see under the tree trunks, and you see the house in the distance and the river beyond, and clearly they want to wall that off, and as you know, change the driveway. It's going to be a completely different effect from the road.
And I think
really good point.
We really need to know what is new and what isn't new on that. I mean, I was blown away by the utility lines being put underground, and obviously that's something that's a change that wasn't clear on the site plan. And the same goes for some of the other things that they were talking about doing. That some of the other things on the site plan, like that vast septic field, and it said approximate edge or something like that. Does this mean approximate after we finish doing it, or we're not quite sure where it is right now? Yeah, I agree. I think we need more information.
Okay, so I took notes. I can draft a list of things that we would like both from the applicant and maybe from the planning board as well, and say they aren't going to get anything from us until this is done. They're on the agenda for August something or another, aren't they? Did I read that second?
They are, but they may be able to get us the information in time.
Quickly, yeah.
If not, the planning board can defer it for another meeting, you know. They certainly have the purview to do that.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Besides the logistics of the committee, why don't we take our...
We want to ask about the plan for the windows. What type of window and quality of window?
Do you want to do that now?
We're talking about changing all the windows, but when they should submit the exact window.
On the barn, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that comes in the elevations, both existing and future. They would have to specify that. But you know what? Completely a little off topic. Catherine, somebody told me that the delay for Marvin windows is 6 months.
Well, their inexpensive line, which used to take 2 weeks to get, is now 10 weeks. So I believe 6 months for the other end, higher end line.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I just want to say on that, Catherine, that it would concern me to ask what type of windows or garage doors, because that might indicate that we're willing to discuss. And so I would rather be silent on that until they win that battle. Personally, I'm saying that's from a strategy standpoint, because I think it's unfair to ask them for more information on something that it's our intent to deny.
Or at least object to.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys?
So Kathy, circling back again to the discussion you and I had, how do we approach or deal with the planning board and what they do with our reports? Do we follow Nancy's suggestion and drag the town board or its liaison into it? Or do we tell the planning board hey, you need to acknowledge us, because it sounds like Melody might be willing to, and Michael doesn't seem to be engaged or something. And I don't know where the rest of the board members fall, but it shouldn't be that arbitrary.
No, well, you know the dynamics of the planning board as it exists today, but I think if we asked on behalf of the committee for early and initial participation in pre-application meetings with clients, number one, we would get it. We already got one or two of those anyway. So we get that. And then number two, that the reports that are prepared after a site visit and summaries from the committee are published on the planning board agenda, and that an opportunity to address those during the planning board meeting from a committee member, whichever one is the best for that particular application, that we request that, so that we're certain from the beginning, at least through the proposed presentation at the planning board, our work is published, for want of a better word, and is given across the board, including to the applicant and the applicant's in a timely fashion, and the applicant's staff, for want of a better word. And then we would, Catherine, do you mean that you would suggest expanding the committee to include a landscape architect? Okay, so that requires a town board proposal, because we're only allowed to have 5 now specified. So we could ask for that and ask them to expand it. And while we're at it, we might as well redefine the role of the committee anyway, but one thing at a time. And in the interim, we could suggest where you think, or we as a group think it's important that the client be required to have Charles Birnbaum work on the project. Is that okay? Good. All right. And Nancy, I'll send out your brochure to them this afternoon, and I'll include it in the discussion for the website redesign. And anything else?
I had one other question. With the idea of somebody buying a property and then closing off the view to the river from the road, is there any town feeling about that, or any laws saying that it's a public view of the river and it shouldn't be?
Yep. I'll give you a perfect example. Warren, remember Carolyn Blackwood?
I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. Man, all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
When she wanted to, and she didn't get it, or she gave up, one or the other. And so we could point to that as an example. That's a really good point, Catherine, really good point. That was a long time ago. I'm not sure you were born then.
It wasn't that long ago.
It feels like it was. But that's a good point. There is precedent that we could point to. Okay, anything else, guys? That feels like a lot.
Do you want feedback on these 2 sites now in terms of, I mean, I was thinking about the archaeology, the fact that the Alderkill thing is going to need archaeology. Are you ready for that, or should I just hold off on it?
I think you hold off on that until this big, gathering at the sites is organized. Okay. But I do think your contribution to the Wilder Cliff situation, once we get the existing and the proposed elevations and any other information that either we've asked for or others will ask for, once we get that, then I think it would be appropriate and important that you give Marty everything too.
Okay.
For the status quo report.
Yeah, because it would be helpful to know what on that site plan is new and what is existing
Right.
in order to make recommendations.
Okay.
Right.
And we're
So,
gonna
so
ask.
what Ann is saying, we need not just elevations of the building, but we need site plans clearly labeling what's proposed. So if indeed there's a lot of new utility trenching proposed, that's all an area that might need archaeological investigation.
Right.
Right. Okay, I got it. Anything else? No?
Any
Right.
updated comments or thoughts that people want to send me for Wildercliff? You know, I can sort of compile things and have it ready. I don't want to submit it to the applicants or the planning board until we get some response to the additional items we're requesting. But just in terms of flagging or you know, further developing the earlier comments immediately after our site visit, I think it's not too early to put some thoughts down.
Do you have the copy of the stuff that we had discussed?
I do.
Warren?
I do.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Do you want me to send it back to you?
Who's doing what with it?
Well, if you have anything to add, I would like that. If you don't have the original somewhere, I can send it to you.
Well, I have the
Probably
original. I have the original. I was just wondering what we're going to do with it from here.
Well, I can compile things as I did on the Aspercourt project.
That would be great, because from our standpoint, nothing has happened since they haven't changed anything.
Right. Correct.
What? What was that?
No, we're saying that on the Wildercliff project, nothing has changed in terms of what was described to us at the site so far, but then they haven't had comments from us in writing. They only had the comments we made to them at the site.
Exactly. That's why I think it's important to get those down and and submitted and be sure that the planning board gives them to the applicant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Larry Garrick didn't hear the comments, and you know, he might not care anyway, but he wasn't present at the site visit, and he was the one who was talking in the planning board meeting.
So is it fair for us to ask exactly where our information goes and what the routing is from here to the client, so that we have a sort of chain on this thing?
Yes, it's absolutely fair. We need to establish that.
I know where it goes now.
Yes, I do too. Nowhere.
Somebody's computer.
The circular file.
Yeah, there you go. Jeez. Oh my.
Hey.
All right, they're gonna be sorry they messed with us.
There you go.
Yeah, you look out, you people. All right. Have we beat that to death for now?
For now.
For now. All right. Let me just tell you what I haven't done with regard to the website. I finally got Matt to get it put back up because, you know, we took it down as a site for construction. He finally put it back up yesterday. And so we'll begin, now that I can see, I forgot totally what it looked like before. So now that we can see it, we can begin to make additions, changes, and suggestions. And I've written down some that I think make sense. And so you guys can look at it and weigh in as well. And hopefully we get that done sometime in the next few weeks, or get it beefed up anyway in the next few weeks. And then, is there any new business? No.
There was the, what did Jim Levy send us? Oh, he gave us a heads up.
Oh, yeah. I can't even, that's going to be, well, you might describe it quickly and then I can say that's going to make Rock Ledge look like a day at the beach. But go ahead. Tell them what it is.
You'll have to remind me what it was.
Okay, so Daytop.
Daytop, there we go. Right,
yeah.
Okay. So Daytop, which you know is a drug and alcohol rehab center that has a campus at the former Fox Hollow Farm at the end of Fox Hollow Road. You got a couple different parcels there. And one is the historic house that Harry T. Lindenberg designed. That's not being used for anything right now. It's in a sort of state of sorry decay. And it's actually on the market. The other parcel, which is where they have their active buildings, include what was, I guess, a stable block, farm block associated with the manor house. And they are proposing to put up some sort of modular trailers on the site to handle some of their functions. I think it's medical
and nursing, medical and nursing.
Yeah. But that's not allowed under the town code. You know, we don't want these little modular buildings chunked down everywhere. So they would apparently need a use variance to do that. So the town planning consultant, Jim Levy, is saying if they don't get that, and they may not, there may not be a path for them to get that, then they may want to put an addition onto this historic stable block carriage house, which has already had some modifications made. We would need to see the site, but it could be a very long, drawn out process, I'm sure. And in the meantime, again, they're trying to sell at least the property with the house on it. I don't know what they're trying to sell the entire property, but it's quite a large property. We were hoping that maybe the neighbors that own Glenburn might buy it, but so far they don't seem to have taken the bait, probably because it's overpriced. But that's something that's coming down the pike, and we will be asked to make some recommendations, but not just yet.
I think the likelihood of them getting trailers in there for a drug treatment medical space is 0.
Right, right.
If only because the neighbors will go bat crazy.
Absolutely, right.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that one up. I'm really looking forward to that on the planning board. Sorry, Marty, what?
I asked Warren if he has any more good news.
Yeah, exactly. Really.
Well,
thanks for bringing it up.
From Ann's standpoint, if it's modular and temporary, then we don't have archaeological problems.
They can put them on cement blocks and it's not a problem.
Hush, hush. Don't be doing that.
Doesn't comply with the building code, though. They could blow away.
There you go. Okay. Other than Warren, does anybody have new business to offer? Nope, that's it. May we adjourn? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Nancy. Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for setting us up.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Sebastian.